Pavan. Pavan. Go outside and tell my wife to keep the kids very quiet. And then come back in. We up and running? So today is it's a couple of days into Kartik. I guess Kartik started on Friday. I kind of think about Kartik as consisting of 4 Sundays, because we have 4 Sunday programs that happen during the month of Kartik. So although it's a 30-day month and it began a couple days ago, is that Panchata for Priya? Under that mask? Okay, I thought you were somebody else. It's hard to know who's who with the mask on. It's an old friend of mine. You looked from this part up. You looked the same, so I wasn't sure. Anyway, so yeah, I almost feel like today's the first day of Kartik, although technically it's not. I sort of feel like that because it's the first Sunday that we get to do a larger Kartik program. And so I guess what I want to discuss today, we just kind of need to settle. It's best if we can do that before I start speaking. All right. I think we're settled now. There's a couple things I want to discuss today. I guess first off, we could talk about Kartik a little bit. With Ramadan and Lent, and I'm sure there's others, it seems to be pretty normative in various religions that they have a period of time that they set aside for fasting and meditation and contemplation. Now, if you get a good tradition worth their salt, they're going to have you doing stuff on a daily basis. For instance, probably none of you are aware of this, but if you look at the liturgical day in a Catholic church, what I mean is when you look at what rituals go on the altar in a Catholic church on a given day, you may be surprised to find out that throughout the course of the day, every day, 365 days a year, in a Catholic church, they celebrate the birth, life, death, and resurrection of Jesus throughout the day. So the ritual is designed throughout the day to go over the basic life story of Jesus with all of the noteworthy moments being observed in a ritualized way. Nobody knew that, right? Cool, right? You Protestants really lost something, you know? They had some nifty bells and whistles. Am I admitting people? So, yeah. Then, if you look at the year, the 365-day year, they also go over on a larger level the birth, life, death, and resurrection of Jesus. Let me say this again, because people are showing up late, and I just don't have the mental capacity to not notice. If you go to a Catholic church, and I'm not talking about you, you get a pass. You come in whenever you want, no problem. I didn't notice you. You're invisible to me. talking about these knuckleheads over in right field. If you look at a Catholic church, every day they celebrate the entirety of Jesus' manifested pastimes in this world, from morning to night. The whole of Jesus' life and times are ritually observed every day in the Catholic Church. In addition to that, throughout the course of the year, in a 365-day solar year, they also observe the whole life of Jesus on a much larger scale. So every day they're doing the whole thing on a micro scale, and on a slightly larger, let's say meso scale, they're celebrating Jesus' life and times throughout the course of a year. Did you guys follow this? It's significant because it's what happens when a group of people really want to celebrate something and think about it, place importance on it, meditate on it, make it part of the fabric of their life. They'll ritualize it and they'll go over it again and again and again so that they don't forget, so it doesn't fall out of their consciousness. Okay. Somebody could ask, why did Jesus get crucified on a Friday? They could also ask, why is that Friday good? It's Good Friday. Why is it a good day? Why isn't it Bad Friday? Awful Friday. Horrible Friday. I'm assuming a familiarity with, Christian terminology that you may not have. The day Jesus was crucified, it occurred on a Friday, and that Friday is known within the church as Good Friday. Although I've always wondered what's so good about the day that your prophet gets massacred, crucified. Literally. Somebody could ask, why was Jesus crucified on a Friday? What's the significance of Friday? There's two things that happen when you show up in the middle of my class. By the way, if you go to a church and you come in the middle of the ceremony, do you know what happens? And if you guys ever attend like an actual church, raise your hand. What happens if you show up in the middle of a church ceremony? They don't admit you. You wait in the foyer. Because it's understood by, hundreds of millions and billions of people that it creates an undue stress on the speaker to have people coming in and doing their thing in the middle of a lecture. However, there's another reason. In addition to it breaking my consciousness as the hustle and bustle takes me away from what I was thinking about, there's another thing. I immediately have to do the math and think, do I start over again? Or how do I repeat what I said in a synopsized format throughout the course of the class to bring the people up to speed so they're not left behind? You could imagine if you were going for a race, you were going to go for a run. There's certain things you need to do before you go for a run. You need to stretch out, you need to put shoes on, You need to warm up. There's a few things like that you need to do. If people come in and you're halfway or a quarter of the way through your run, if they don't put shoes on, if they don't stretch out, they won't get the full running experience. So now I got to think, am I going to stop as I have a couple of times? Am I going to repeat myself? And so in addition to just the generic breaking of my consciousness as my peripheral vision is filled with other stuff, I also get the further burden of having to think about how I'm going to bring you up to speed. Now it's a little bit of a razor's edge, because on one hand, if you come to the temple at any time, on any day, we're grateful to have you. And if you drove half an hour, 45 minutes, or an hour to get here, we've got no complaints. Show up and inconvenience us, and that's what we're here for. And that's sincere. On the other hand, if you didn't have to show up late, you didn't have to look at your phone, if you didn't have to do that, but you did it anyway, that's not so nice. Just consider that next time you're deciding whether to watch the end of Jerry Springer episode that you're on, or whatever tragically important thing that you're doing that's stopping you from showing up on time to the program. Okay. Every day on the altar at a Catholic church, or an Orthodox church for that matter, for maybe 10% of the world's population, maybe 20% when you add them all up, they celebrate, the priests, unbeknownst to the congregation, the priests in their original language, Latin or whatever it may be, celebrate the birth, life, and death and resurrection of Jesus. Then every year they celebrate the birth, life, death, and resurrection of Jesus. When I learned this, I thought it was incredibly powerful, because it showed what happens when people have something that's really important. They memorialize it. They memorialize it. And they ritualize it and they repeat it, so that they keep it always in their mind and their consciousness. And so I was also thinking, why was Jesus crucified on a Friday? What's the significance of a Friday? You know, is it just before the Shabbat? Like, what was the significance? What was the meaning? It was right after the Passover meal, and so then, you know, what was something special about Friday? You follow? It's not. It was that they had the Passover meal, which consists of a slaughtered animal. That's what you do at Passover. You ritually slaughter an animal. And then Jesus became the sacrificial lamb. Don't be too heavy with them unless the parents are there. Then tell the parents to do their job. Tell the parents to do their job. More than it being Friday and that being the significance of the day Jesus was crucified, it's rather because Passover was celebrated the day before. And the implication was that just as the Passover lamb was sacrificed and offered to God, so Jesus now became the sacrificial lamb that was offered to God on behalf of all of us to extirpate our sins. And so it's not so much that Friday is so special, but there's 7 days in a week, and something special happened. It's going to happen on some day. You follow? So sometimes when you're looking for why did something occur at this particular time, the simple answer is, well, that special event had to occur on some day, and so it occurred on this day because, like people get married. You're getting married on a Saturday, right? I also got married on a Saturday. The reason people get married on a Saturday is because it's the weekend and people have that time off from work. And so it makes sense, logistically speaking. So people tend to want to get married on a Saturday or a Sunday. A lot of times people will want to get married according to astrology stuff. They'll want to calculate when the best day is to get married. But usually if you want to go that route, you're going to end up getting married like on a Tuesday at 7 a.m. And so you either got to commit, you know? You either commit, like I'm going to do the astronomy thing, and then I'm going to get married at a really bizarre time that's ridiculously inconvenient for everybody under the sun. Or you just don't, and you just get married on the right day that, you know, is convenient for you. And you throw caution to the wind. But when you try to give the priest, like, should I get married on Friday or Saturday or Sunday? Which day is most auspicious? The answer is like none of them. If you want to do the astronomy thing, give me a year. Let me look at a year or 2 years, and then we'll pick out the right day for you. We need 500 days to look at. Then we can pick out the right day. And people do that. People do that. Like 2000 was I think it was a golden dragon year. I don't know why you're Chinese, that's why I'm looking at you. And so, right, 2000? How do you not know? Are you kidding me? You don't know? 2000, I believe, was a golden dragon year. So a ton of people got pregnant in late 1999, specifically because they wanted to have a kid who was born in that year. Does that make sense? It happens every I think 144 years or something like that. It goes like that. Every 12 years, then every 12 of 12 it happens. Of course, I'm just thinking to myself, are you kidding me? Really? Like of the, whatever, hundreds of millions of people, they're all like specially blessed. Anyway, okay. So when I look at the month of Kartik, there's a number of reasons why we consider this month to be sacred. And I want to warm you guys up by comparing it to something which would be at least within some of your referent points. If you look at a serious tradition, like Catholicism, they've been around for a couple thousand years. They thought stuff through. They had the time and the money and the numbers to really get into it. You see what's important to them. It's reflected in their daily worship. It's also reflected in their yearly worship. So what is it? Like, what are we doing during Kartik? I was thinking about this. One thing we're doing is we're celebrating the harvest season. This is pretty common in Chinese culture, but I'm not going to look at you anymore because you don't know anything about Chinese culture. Where are you from again?
Like, we're in China.
Yeah, you're from China, right?
Southeast, close to Taiwan.
Yeah, so I don't know what.
I don't know either.
There's a mid-autumn festival in China. You guys familiar with that? Oh, you do know that? Okay, all right. Probably because of the moon cakes or something like that, right? That's why. I'm an equal opportunity critic. If you look at the Mid-Autumn Festival or you look at the Harvest Moon here in traditional American culture, People celebrate the harvest season because they grew food, and with that food, they're going to survive the winter. It's not that big of a deal for us because we've all got indoor heating. But if you didn't have indoor heating, and you didn't have, a government to lean on, if you didn't collect enough food in the summertime, you didn't grow enough food in the summertime, then you pretty much were guaranteed to die in the winter. So this whole, the seasons, when you plant food, how you grow food, it was a very important thing in people's lives. We have a farm in Escondido, and it's a big deal for us. When we plant, how we plant. We're looking at the schedule for the rain and for the heat. We check out the almanac and see what the traditional weather patterns are. This stuff was important. Back in the day, none of you guys remember this. Maybe you do. Some older people might remember it. Everybody used to have something in their car, a book in their car. Everybody. There was a book in your car. Guaranteed you had a book in your car. What was that book called? You had a Thomas Guide in your car. Every car had a Thomas Guide. Raise your hand if you know what a Thomas Guide is. You know, Ryan? You don't know. A Thomas Guide is a thick book like this thick that has every single street in a city in it. And it's indexed like you at a library where you can look up streets and addresses. So you can be anywhere in the city and find out where you want to go in the city by looking at this book and flipping pages. And you can chart a route to get to where you want to go. The reason for Thomas Guides was because there were no cell phones with GPS. And therefore, you had to have a way to figure out where you were going to. It used to be you would talk to someone on the phone, they'd give you directions how to get to their house, and you would write them down, and you'd carry them with you, and you'd look at the directions to get to their house. I feel like I'm giving Plato's analogy of the cave. I know you guys aren't familiar with that either, but anyway. You used to have to call 411 to get phone numbers. Or every household had another thing, a big book. Every household. What was it called? Yeah, the yellow page. You looked at that thing. That thing was on your kitchen counter, and you looked at it every single day. If you wanted to go shopping or do something, you'd have to open that up. Anyway, we've largely, really what we've done is we've electrified everything with computers so that it's processed through binary code, and so that we can do all these calculations really quickly, and then we have an easy interface for the user. And we've taken, the trouble of flipping through the pages of a book, and it just becomes clicking a couple of clicks on your keyboard. But the basic system is the same. There was a need for something to occur, and there was a need to be able to do something. It used to be done manually, and now it's just done in a semi-automatized manner, where a lot of the legwork is being done for you, and you just get the end product, like what a calculator does, what an abacus used to do. When I was a kid, we used abacuses. I was joking. We used calculators. So, and then before that, people were counting on their fingers, figuring it out. So, when we look at what these old traditions did, it's really not too different to what we do now. We just maybe haven't thought it through the way they did, and we're just end users, And so we don't have to think about where things come from or why they exist as much, because we're just on the receiving end. So it's like, oh, it's the month of Kartik, and therefore we do this and that. But I thought there'd be some value in looking at why this month is special to us. So I think fairly easily, Kartik as a month has something in common with all harvest months in that they're celebrating the agrarian lifestyle. And we're still dependent on the agrarian lifestyle. We just don't know that. We just go to the gas station or the liquor store, the supermarket, and everything is just there. But somewhere, somebody had to figure out the temperature changes and the climate and how to plant things and how to protect them from vermin and how to, give nutrients to those plants and so on and so forth. That had to happen. And so, ultimately things all boil down to real simple things. You go as the end user, you go to a grocery store, but somewhere along the road, somebody, a farmer, had to do what people have always done and figure out how to grow food and get enough nutrients and water for that stuff. You look at your smartphone to figure out where you're going, but the people who wrote that code had to do the same thing a Thomas guide did and just make it really easy for you. So a lot of us drop in to a religion or a tradition and we participate in a celebration or a festival, but we don't bother asking ourselves why that festival takes place or why it occurs. And so I wanted to look at why the month of Kartik is sacred for us. And one thing that immediately comes to mind, it's just very, very easy, and you can see it prima facie, is that we're celebrating a harvest season. Food has been grown, the granaries are full, the summer has ended, the summer crops have been harvested, and now we're going to make it through winter. And that happens all over the world. To this day it happens. We just don't know it because we don't live in an agrarian society. We ultimately do, but we live as the end user of an agrarian society. There's farmland all over the place where they grow everything that we eat. We just do planes, trains, and automobiles and get the end product and never really see what's going on. Another thing that occurs during this month is on Diwali, which is in a couple of weeks, a very, very special miracle in our tradition occurred. And in the same way that the Friday became good because Jesus died for our sins on that day, and not that Jesus was crucified on a pre-existing Good Friday, that we have to give reasons why that day was picked. Rather, the day became special because that's when that miracle occurred. This is called the Euthyphro dilemma. Plato, Socrates have a book, and the Euthyphro dialogue is in there, and a question is asked by Socrates to Euthyphro, who he's having a conversation with. And he asks him, does God love something because it's good? Now let's say God loves it when you help old ladies cross the street. That's a good thing, you would do that, and so God loves that. God appreciates that. There's an implication to saying that God loves things which are good. The implication is that,
Goodness is above God.
say it a little louder.
Goodness is above God.
Why?
Because goodness had to be a prerequisite to God. God wants to know whether or not something was. Can I start over?
Yes.
If things are good, that means that they're innately good or bad. But God is loving something that already has an innate goodness or badness, which means that God, it's separate from God and above God.
Why?
I don't know how to answer.
Anybody else want to answer? Sometimes you know the right answer, but you don't know why it's the right answer, and that's still a problem. Go for it, Ryan. I was hoping you'd answer.
I was very quiet.
You can't answer the question?
No, absolutely not.
Okay. If you define God as the origin of everything, which is a pretty normal definition of God, and then you say God loves something which is good, it means that thing was good before God existed. Therefore, it's before God. Therefore, God is no longer God. Therefore, its goodness or its existence predates God. And in that sense, it's above, superior to, or really before and more original and therefore more primary than God. Did you follow that? See what you missed? You missed the idea that God was the source of everything. You assumed it, but you need to state it because everybody else might not assume it like you did. When you're a child, you think that your parents know everything you see. If you tell a 2-year-old to look into a box, and they look in the box, they will assume their parent knows what's in the box. Because if they can see it, they assume their parent can see it too, because they haven't fully arrived at a separate sense of identity. At the age of around 3, children learn how to deceive. They learn that they can look in a box and they can say to their mom or dad, there's nothing in the box or there's something in the box, when it's the opposite. And their parents don't know if they're telling the truth or not. And they experience deceiver's delight, liar's delight, which is what happens when you get over on somebody and you lie to them and you think you get away with it. And so children experience that around the age of 3. You can't assume the people you're talking to accept all the premises you accept. And if you're asked to explain why, you need to state your premises. There's some pretty heavy implications of saying that God loves things which are good. It means that goodness exists before God, and therefore God is no longer the source of everything, which is a pretty big debit in your conception of divinity. So you go the other way and you say, no, it becomes good because God loves it. But there's a pretty serious ramification of that philosophical idea as well. What's the ramification of that one?
What if God likes something that's really cruel or hurtful to other people?
Let's just say, for instance, that God likes cruelty and torture, wanton torture. Because it becomes good because God likes it, therefore everything in this world is totally arbitrary, and God just arbitrarily chose some things as good and some things as bad, and there is no innate goodness or badness in the world, which goes against sort of everything that we experience, and you're asked to adopt this very, very artificial theological idea. That's the Euthyphro dilemma. The 2 horns of the Euthyphro dilemma. You pick which horn you want, But if like somebody says, I'm going to gore you, like a bull's going to gore you, would you prefer to be gored by this horn or this one? And you pick your horn, you still end up getting gored. You follow? The two horns of the Euthyphro dilemma. There's a similar sort of dichotomy here. We can ask, I gave the example of Jesus. Why was Jesus crucified on a Friday? Was because the Friday was special? Or did the Friday become special because Jesus was crucified on it? You follow? I think in this case, with the Euthyphro dilemma and God's goodness and goodness in the world, it's a little more complicated because if you jettison either one of the two, you have a problem. Either God's not the source of everything or goodness is arbitrary. You want to try to find a way to overcome that dichotomization and figure out something you can say that holds both things true. However, there are some cases where there is two ways of viewing things and you pick one. I think primarily this month is sacred for us because on Diwali, thousands of years ago, a miracle occurred. And that miracle is the Damodar Leela. It happened on Diwali in this month. Now, why did it happen on Diwali? It actually didn't happen because it was already a holy day. The pastime occurred. It had to occur on Sunday. That's the day it occurred, and we built our festivities around that sacred event, which took place in the middle of the month. And a few weeks before and a few weeks after it became sacred, and we made a whole thing out of it. Did you guys follow that? The entire class was designed for me to be able to make that sentence and have it land. Did you follow that? Did anybody not follow that? Let me say it again. In the Euthyphro dilemma, you got to pick one. You got to pick your poison, right? All right. So now you can ask yourself, why was Jesus crucified on a Friday? And you could say, that's not an important detail. The Friday became good because Jesus was crucified. Or you could say, he was crucified because Friday is good. You follow? Now, in some cases, you might not want to give up one of those. You don't want to give up God being the source of everything, and you also don't want to give up goodness existing. You follow? So you got to find a way to do both. You got to walk and chew gum, right? However, there might be situations where you just pick which one. And I'm saying that rather than looking for something special about this month, and that's why Krishna performed this pastime, flip the script. Krishna performed a pastime that I haven't told you yet. And that pastime was so special that the whole month became sacred for us. And it's also a harvest time. There's also the 4 months of Chaturmas. This is different than most harvests. India is a monsoon climate. Now, a monsoon climate really changes things for you. Anybody ever spend the monsoon in India? Raise your hand. The world changes dramatically. It's like life. It's almost like a COVID type thing every single year. You never thought about it like that, right? It's just all of a sudden there's a guy standing over you pouring buckets of water over your head all day long. Every time you walk out of the house, there's a guy above you and he's just pouring a bucket of water on your head. And everywhere you walk, where you walk to, there's a bucket of water. It's not like it's not like a heavy rain. It's like a bucket of water, like buckets of water being. It's insane. It's like immediate floods. Everything's flooding. You really can't go out. Nothing dries. And you might think that's not a big deal, but it is if you don't have a dryer. It is if you don't have a dryer. Your underwear doesn't dry for like a month. You know what I'm talking about? It's ridiculous, right? You can't go out shop. I mean, you can, but you're just deluged. And everybody gets sick, too, because the heat, and then it gets ridiculously humid, and people get sick like anything. It's a dangerous time of the year. Lots of people pass away during that time of year, yeah.
And also your service doesn't end. And there's photos in temples where there's water flooded up to the deity and people are on their knees in the water serving the deity.
Yeah, that's post-monsoon. What happens, that's post-monsoon. What happens, the monsoons happen and everything's kind of semi-underwater. But then, India's on a tilt. So you have like the Gangetic Plain. So then all the snowpack, along with all the new rain, goes in the Ganga, swells to like maybe 4 times, 5, 6 times its normal size. And then the Ganga dumps out into the Bay of Bengal. And what's right before the Bay of Bengal? Bengal. And so the entirety of Bengal gets flooded. Now Bengal opens the floodgates. And they dump all their water into Bangladesh. And Bangladesh gets it worse than anybody. Like it's unbelievable. So you'll see at our temple in Mayapur, which is in Bengal, which is after the monsoon, like August, September, then you'll see that in that place, devotees will be standing up to their waists in water doing the arti, but then it gets worse. Then you'll see devotees in boats doing the arti. They'll roll into the temple in a boat. Because the deity's so underwater, you can't stand there and do the worship because you'd be underwater. So they roll out on a boat and they do the arti in a boat. How wild is that? You know, every place in Bengal, and this is also Bangladesh, and other places in the world too, you don't live really on the ground floor. You live on what we would call the second floor. In India, they call it the first floor. Just like we don't have 13 stories in the U.S., but they have 13 stories in India. And we call it the second floor, but it's called the first floor in India. But you don't live on the ground floor. Because in certain parts of India, the ground floor is completely flooded. And so every year, you have to go and repaint your ground floor and deal with water damage. And you build expecting the place to be flooded. Anyway, if you live in a place where there's monsoons, it's another season. India has 6 seasons. One of them is the rainy season. So it's a whole nother season. It's a whole nother season. And it's dramatic. It's not like even equatorial. Like there's certain monsoon climates. Like I've been in Singapore. I've been in Thailand. It's not the same. It's like there's something special about the monsoons in India. Anyway, there's 4 months of the year, starting with the monsoon season. And in those 4 months, devotees traditionally stop traveling, stay in one place. And if they're going to stay in one place and not do anything, what do? They chant. And they increase their austerities and their religious observances because they can't really do anything else because the whole world is stopped. So they use it as an opportunity to just go internal and get real deep in their practice. Sort of what you're supposed to do during a COVID type situation. If you're more materially engrossed, then old age and pandemics are just an absolute disaster. If you're more spiritually inclined, a pandemic is a great opportunity to chant more seriously and study more and dive into your heart and soul. And additionally, old age becomes your friend. Because you were controlling your senses when you were young and it was harder. And then you get old and it's a lot easier. And it's like somebody took the training wheels off and you can really move. So Kartik is the last of the 4 months of Chaturmas that have to do with the rainy season. And it's a harvest festival. But really those things are incidentals. What happened was a miracle occurred about 2 weeks from now. And it was so special and meant so much to so many people that they have a whole month around it. They made a whole month out of it. Now there's a bunch of our holy days that take place in this month, and some of those pre-existed. But the reason why this month is so critical to us, and why it's so sacred to us, and why it's so important, is easily traceable to the reality that the miracle occurred in our tradition. And that is the centrifugal force, that's the cynosure, that's the natural center of this holy day. And this holy day therefore revolves around that event. Did you follow it now? Okay. I was just, as I was walking over here, I was thinking about Kartik and why it's special to us. And I had these thoughts, I had this idea, and I wanted to flesh it out with you guys. And really, we're no different than any other tradition. Other traditions have what's special to them, and it gets exemplified and expressed in their daily ritual, in their yearly ritual, with their sacred months. And so in that sense, we're just like everybody else. We've got what's special to us. And if you want to compare, if you want to do comparative discourse, you want to look at different traditions and think about them, figure out which one you want to pledge allegiance to, if any, then what you would look at is you would look at what are those miracles, what are those special things that your tradition revolves around and hinges around. That's what you would do. We all on the same page? Okay. I thought we would begin, we're going to sing a song in about 10 minutes. And I thought we would start to go over the song, just a little bit. And by doing so, we would begin to touch on and just touch our heads. I don't want to say dip our toes in, because that's a little disrespectful. We're not someone to touching sacred things with our toes, but we can dip our head into something and our hearts into something. The song we're going to sing starts off, Namami Ishwaram Sachit Ananda Rupam. Namami, I offer my namaskar. Like when you say namaste, it's two words, namahate, and it becomes namaste through something called contraction, what's called sandhi in Sanskrit. But you can also take the verbal root nam, which means respect, and you can turn it into a verb. Namaha means respects as a noun. But you can also take nam and you can turn it into a verb. And if you turn it into a verb, then you conjugate it. Namami is the verb, nam, conjugated and made into a verb, and it means I offer my respects. I am offering my respects. First person, singular, present tense. I am offering my respects. Did you know that's what namami meant?
I mean, I couldn't make it out after you explained.
That means no, you didn't know. When you say yes, I knew after you explained it, that's equivalent to saying no, I didn't know. But with just a little ego attached. Namami, I respect. Namaste, respects to you. Namaste, respects to you. Namaskar, making respect. Namami, I respect. I offer respects. Namami, now of course if you're offering respect, the next question is, who am I offering respect to? Namami Ishwaram. Ishwaram comes from Ish, it means to control. Ishwar, his name is Ishwar. His name is Ishwar. Your birth name is Ishwar, right?
My mother's name was Ishwari.
Your mother's name, and what is your name? Ishwar. But no, your birth name.
My name was Purushottam.
Oh, that's right, Purushottam. He's been Ishwar Puri for so long, I forgot. His name was Purushottam. his Karmi name was Purushottam. And then he got initiated, and his name became Ishwar Puri, Prabhu. So his name is Ishwar. Ishwar means controller. It's roughly equivalent to the word Lord in English. I offer my obeisances to the Lord. Ishwaram means to the Lord. I offer my obeisances to the Lord. What kind of Lord? Satchit Ananda Rupam. The Lord who has an eternal form of bliss and knowledge. What's being set up here is that we're getting introduced to the power of God. I offer my obeisances to the eternal, blissful, and full of knowledge Supreme Lord. The omnipotent, omniscient, omnibenevolent Supreme Lord. What's called a triple O God. A classic conception of God. I offer my obeisances to that Supreme Lord. But then things are going to change. Lasat Kundalam. He has dancing, swinging earrings. That's not really a feature of power. When you say the Lord has sparkling, swinging, dancing earrings, that's not a power play. That's not establishing the power of the deity. Rather, that's an attempt to establish what? I'm sorry? The beauty. Lasat kundalam gokule brajamanam. I offer my obeisance to the Lord who has beautiful earrings and who is splendidly and brilliantly manifested in Vrindavan. Now you've got a powered deity and you've got a sweet deity. And they've been described as being the same. This is within the first line. Namami Ishwaram Satchit Ananda Rupam Lasat Kundalam Gokule Brajamanam. The Lord is brilliantly manifested in Gokul, in the land of the cows. That's also kind of a red herring that doesn't fit. It's not a classical conception of God on a throne surrounded by devotees offering their respects. The respects is there, but it's a respect to a village deity. The deity is in Vrindavan. It's in a village. It's in an agrarian village. Villages, by their very definition, are agrarian. It's redundant. But then, well, what's Krishna doing in this village? You've got the Supreme Lord. Okay, he should be in heaven, but he's not. He's in a village. Well, what's he doing in the village? There's got to be a reason, right? What's he doing? Yashoda Biya Ulukalat Davamana. He's Davamana. He's running. Why is he running? Is he running a race? What's he doing? Krishna moves faster than the speed of the mind, according to the Upanishads, and has no legs, but yet moves faster than the speed of the mind. What's he doing? Why is he running? Yashoda Biya. He's running in fear. Bi is fear. It's where you get the word bhaya from. He's running in fear of Yashoda. And he's running ulukalat. He's running from a mortar. There's a big grinding mortar in a home. You have a large grinding mortar where you grind grains and things like that. Not a little mortar and pestle, but a big operation. You turn it and you attach animals to it. The animals walk around it and it grinds the grains. It's a critical feature in an agrarian society. He's running from a grinding mortar And he's running in fear of Yashoda. Who's Yashoda? She's Krishna's mother. You just said that he's the source of everything, the Supreme Lord, and you dropped him into a village. What's he doing in the village? He's running from his mother. Why does he have a mother? And why is he running? Oh, because he's afraid. Like, what happened next? Atyantata drutya gopya paramristam. She captured him because she ran faster. So now you've got the Supreme Being being outrun. He's in fear, and there's somebody who's overpowering him and capturing him. That's just the first verse. That's our first verse. I'm offering my respects to God, who has an eternal form of blissful knowledge. But he's also incredibly beautiful, with these beautiful earrings that are reflecting the light. His effulgence is being reflected. His earrings are being made more beautiful. He's so beautiful, he's making the earrings more beautiful because his effulgence is reflected. And it's like the sun reflecting the moon. The sun makes the moon beautiful. So Krishna is making the earrings beautiful because his natural effulgence is reflected in the earrings. He's Bhushana Bhushana, the ornament of ornaments. He's impossibly beautiful. And he's in a village. What's up with that? He's running. Why is he running? He's in fear. Why is he afraid? His mother's chasing him. Why would he have a mother? And why would she be chasing him? Oh, and she caught him too. Rudantang Muhur. He's crying so much. Why is he? The Supreme Lord, the ever joyful Lord. We're just told that Krishna is ever joyful and completely joyful, and he's crying. Rudantang Muhur Necha Yugman Mrijantam. He's crying a lot and he's rubbing his eyes. Kadam Boja. With his two little hands, he's rubbing his eyes. Shatanka Netram. His eyes are fearful. Muhu Shwasa. He's not just crying a lot, he's also breathing. He's really scared. He's panting. Chirekanka Kanta. Sita Graivam. And his necklace is shivering. His necklace is shivering. His necklace of pearls is shaking. He's wearing a necklace. It's shaking as he's moving, his necklace is moving. Damodaram Bhakti Badham. And that Damodar, that Supreme Lord, whose name is Damodar. Damodar is two words, Dhamma Udara. Udara is where you get the word udder from in English. It means abdomen. And Dhamma means to bind. And so Damodar is the one who is bound around the belly. That's the name of Krishna. That's the name of this month. And that's the name of the vow. It's called Damodar Vrat. The month is called Damodar. And the form of the Lord that this song is worshiping is called Damodar Ashtakat. 8 verses for Damodar. And we worship Damodar on this month. And Damodar means literally bound around the belly with ropes. That's what it means. And how is he bound? Bhakti Badha. He's bound with bhakti. Ichijik Swalilabi. By these pastimes, are we done? 2 minutes. By these pastimes, Itijik Swalilabi, by these leelas, Swagoshangni Majantam, Ananda Kunde. He's drowning his devotees in an ocean of bliss. He's full of bliss, and by these miracles, the devotees become also drowned in bliss. Aksyapayantam. And he's declaring, what's he declaring? Tadiyesha Tadiya Ishita Gyeshu. To those who are immersed in knowledge of my power. Bhaktaiji Tattva. I'm telling you, I'm conquered by bhakti. Puna Prematastam Shatabriti Bande. I'm offering my obeisances filled with love hundreds of times to that deity. What deity? The Supreme Lord in heaven who came down into this world into a village and engaged in loving pastimes with his devotees, which were intimate enough that they were able to embrace and capture him within their hearts and bind him with the ropes of love. And that deity, a deity who's so powerful that he's boundable by love, a deity who's so wonderful that he's bindable by love, that deity I'm worshiping. And I'm worshiping that deity with love, and I'm offering this hundreds of times to such a deity. The idea of a sacred month, the idea of a ritual to consecrate that sacred month, the idea of yearly going through stuff, the idea of it matching up with harvest festivals, all that stuff is fine. But if you really understand an actual tradition, if you really understand the heart of a tradition, you look at the conception of divinity. You can look at like the beautiful idea of Jesus dying for our sins, but it's a bit macabre, and you're wearing like a dying deity on your thing, and you meditate on him dying all the time until you develop wounds on your own body. It's a bit macabre. It's a bit of like a blood cult. It's a bit cannibalistic too. You're like, you're eating the body and blood of Christ every day ritually. It's a little bit of a stretch when you look at it dispassionately. You take that and then you can compare it to what I just described. And this is what you do. You figure out the why. Why is this a holy day? Why is this a special day? What's going on with this? Why is this significant for you people? And we try to touch that. Are we done?
It's still going.
Magically it's still going?
It's a new feature.
Really? Okay. I just kind of jammed it all in there. But let me just say it one more time, because I missed something. We start off with Christianity, and we looked at something that at least half of you should know. Christianity and its obsession with the cannibalistic cult of Jesus, eating his body and blood, him becoming a sacrificial animal, and that God had to, the wages of sin is death, and so someone had to bleed, and he couldn't do it any other way because God somehow cruelly made the world where people have to bleed in order for somebody to achieve perfection. You got that whole thing, but they ritualize it, and they do a good job. They've been doing it for 2,000 years, and they won 3 billion followers. And they're pretty good. They got some good stuff going on. And they fast on certain days, and they follow certain observances, and some of those holy days become holy because a miracle occurred on those days. You don't have to look for another reason why it was chosen for a holy day. It's a holy day because the holy thing happened on that day, and it had to manifest in this world on some day. Now that we kind of springboard off of that, and we look at a foreign tradition, which may also be very familiar. And then we look at harvest festivals, more generally speaking, and our harvest festival, and our monsoon festival, and our sacred months, and how we quiet down, and we turn lemons into lemonade, and we make something beautiful out of a difficult time, like the monsoon season, or the changing of the seasons and the winter coming. And then we look at what we're doing. And what we're doing is we're ultimately celebrating one event. And what's that event? It happened about 2 weeks from now. It's the Damodar Leela. And what was that Damodar Leela? It was a pastime when the Supreme Lord, who we can't touch, came down into this world, became available to the devotees, became lovable and embraceable in a form where his beauty overwhelmed his power. And the unknowable became knowable, the unlovable became lovable, the untouchable became embraceable. Not just touchable, but embraceable. And ultimately our argument is that a real Supreme Lord, a complete conception of God, would have to be conquerable by love. A deity that wasn't conquerable by love, a deity that wasn't able to fall in love with his devotees, a deity that couldn't become conquered by and captured by and bound by love, would actually be deficient. It'd be more robotic than personal. There's something beautiful it's like to be a person. We have the capacity for love. And that's divine. We have that capacity because Krishna has that capacity. We have that, just like with the Yuthafur lemma. We have that because Krishna has that capacity. And this Leela explores that in a powerful, dramatic way. And that miracle, that dramatization, touched the hearts of hundreds of millions of people. So much that they named the month after him. It's Damodar, Mas. That's our name for this month. Tens of millions of people, they know it as Damodar Mas. And they follow Damodar Brat. What's Damodar Brat? We offer candles to the deity. Little baby Krishna being bound around a grinding mortar by his mother. It's right there. We have a deity. We put it up. It's on the right side of the altar. And we offer candles to that. And we worship that ideal. We worship that conception of divinity. And that's what's going on in this month. Then you don't just know the right answer, but you know why that's the right answer. And you can explain it to yourself and to other people. And when you can do that, then you can dive into it much more readily. And so I wanted to at least introduce things so we could frame it out and start to dip our heads into it a little bit and our hearts. Final thoughts? So now we're going to do arti. Normally we do a stand-up kirtan and an arti, but I'm a little freaked out by the fact that we're getting 100,000 cases a day. We're reaching new limits. The most cases we've ever had in a day was yesterday. And so we're going to crack the doors open and these doors. So there's both double doors are open. We're going to socially distance. You can wait for a sec. We're going to socially distance. We're going to sit down. The QR code is there, which is ridiculous. We had like 8 of them in Long Beach, but we've only got 1 here. We'll call that a fail.
We have some in our house. We're going to talk about that. It's in the back, in the recording back.
Okay. We're going to, you guys, you know what the QR code is? You really?
Not that old.
All right, man. The technology's been around for like 6-7 years, but it just got popular like 5 minutes ago. Somehow like nobody liked it, but until they had to. And so you can take a photograph of that with your phone, and then it'll take you there. And so you can find the song on our browser, so you can have a touch-free experience and not have to touch our songbooks or our song sheets. We have song sheets. We're not going to give them out. Figure it out with the QR code. Make it work. And then you sit, distance apart, and then we're going to sing the Sam Damodar Ashtakam. We're not going to do a stand-up kirtan. We're just going to sing the Damodar Ashtakam. And then, while that's going on, we're going to light a candle up there. No lighters. No Achman cup to wash your hands either. Touch-free experience. And we're going to spread out the candles so they're spread out on the altar floor. You don't have to do it. One of you guys can do it. And while the priest is offering ritual worship, which primarily consists of offering a lamp, you're going to also get to be a priest and offer a lamp to Krishna. We tried to make it as safe as we could. So we washed our hands and we spread out those candles. We're going to light a big candle. You can touch your small candle to the big candle. Don't touch them to the other small candles that have already been lit, because those have already been offered. You're going to offer with your right hand 7 times in a clockwise motion, the opposite of what you're seeing. It would look like this. And so you're going to offer it 7 times. Then you can place it into the rice. Do not make a line. One family or one group of people who are part of the same family go up together. You offer it, then you leave, then the other group goes up. There's not many of us will be able to swing it. Just to say it again. No Achman cup to wash your hand, no lighter, pre-lit candle, socially distanced candles so you can touch one without touching others, QR code, offer it 7 times in a clockwise motion. Do not make a line. If you make a line, we're going to call the police on you. Do not make a line. We're not in the lines. Just chill. It'll empty out, then jump up and go do it. We'll leave it open so you can all do it. We'll sing the Damodar Ashtakam. You guys follow along. You offer your lamps. No stand-up kirtan. And then we'll conclude the program. Did I miss anything? It's good, right? You open those doors. Anandani, can you spread out those candles? And then we should have a container of, whatchamacallit. Okay, and we have a container of hand sanitizer. You guys can bathe in that afterwards. I think you're supposed to drink it, if I've understood correctly. Pretty sure that's how it works. And so if you want to use a little hand sanitizer after the fact, you're welcome to. That's fine as well. And we're just trying to set you guys up for as touch-free of an experience as possible. We were going to just say don't do it and just offer the lamp within your heart. But, I mean, we're opening doors and going to the grocery store and doing stuff. And so we figured this was relatively safe. Let's nobody get sick from this. Pavan, let's crack both those doors open. And then we're going to do the Damodar Asakam and we'll go from there. All right? Okay. Thank you so very much.